Assalamu alaikum. Welcome for the third class of the lesson Understanding the Government. You can find this lesson onto your textbook page number 129 until 132. We have been discussing this lesson in the previous two classes, so this is going to be our last class for this lesson. Lesson objective that we have already discussed, that you must be able to. The objective of the lesson is that at the end of the lesson you must be able to compare the different forms of modern governments and learn about the structure and tiers of government in a democracy. Our first topic today is political parties and elections. Coming to our first question, we need to know that what are political parties? They are a group of people who share similar views, or you can say that they have same opinion about an issue. Political parties are a way for citizens to exercise their power in the affairs of their country when they elect certain people for parliament. It means these representatives reflect the opinion of public in decision making. So in this way, political parties get control of power in a country. If majority of a country's citizens are conservative, they will elect a conservative party. So the government will be conservative. Political parties normally disclose their plan regarding different issues to the public before general vote. So people who share the same opinion like that party, they vote for it. Election is a procedure by which political parties are elected to form the government. In different countries, the election procedure varies from place to place. National elections involve a broad procedure as compared to an election inside your classroom. In an election, people vote for the person they want to elect, and you can say they want to be represented by that person in the parliament. So by this way, they elect either the political party or either a single individual for representing them in the parliament. The election for electing a government or forming a government is quite different from an ordinary election like an election in the class. So it has a defined procedure. It is formal voting. It is confidential. The voter is voting for a person or a political party. Nobody knows that for whom he has voted. And at the end of the voting, the results are declared publicly and the winner is decided, and the winner actually is allowed to get into the parliament and form a government, or you can say the winning party is allowed to form the government, to run the government. Before the election, at a government level, or you can say at a national level, the political parties are given the chance to explain their manifesto or to explain their plan to the general public in order to convince them to get their votes. So they try to convince people for what they are planning to do in the future. By this way, the people, if they agree with their plan, they vote for them and they elect them into the parliament. Here below in the picture you can see that there is one way of conducting an election, which is known as simple majority rule. In this kind of election, the party that gets most number of the votes, or you can say the individual that gets the most number of the votes, is declared as the winner. For example, in this picture you can see out of 100 votes, party B and party C collectively they got 60% of the votes, 35% party B and 25% party C. But the winner is still party A because they got 40% of the vote. Although collectively they got 60%, but they are not a winner from party A who got 40% of overall vote. So in this case, the party A will be given the chance to form a government and to run the state. Another way of conducting an election is proportional representation. In this kind of election, it means that votes are counted and positions to run the government or to form a government are distributed among the political parties according to the proportion of votes that they received in the election. For example, if a party gets 40% of the vote, he will get 40% of the positions in the state, in the government to run the state. So the number of the seats in the parliament will be defined according to the percentage of the votes that a party gets in the general elections. So this is called proportional representation. This means that they don't govern a majority, and the other parties may vote together to oppose them when they try to pass laws or make other decisions involving the whole government. This line means that in a proportional government, although the party gets 40% of the seats, for example, but the remaining 60% of the seats can go to different parties according to their proportion. And in the parliament, they can form a group to oppose the party that has majority of the votes. For example, 40% of the vote, the party that holds 40% of the vote can be defeated by other parties collectively when they form a group. So this kind of the voting is called, this kind of the election is called proportional representation. Another procedure of conducting election is through preferential voting. In this kind of voting, the voters are given options to show their preferences for different candidates as their first preference, or the second, or the third, or even sometimes fourth and fifth preference. But the first condition for the preference is that the winner of the voting will have more than 50% of the votes. For example, all the first preference candidates, the winner of among all of them should have more than 50% of the votes. If all the first preference candidates, none of them has more than 50% of the vote, then the second preference candidates will be counted for their votes, and if any of them the second preference gets more than 50% of the vote, will be given the chance to run the government, or to form the government, or to become member of the parliament. This kind of the voting is conducted in different countries, for example, Australia, Ireland, and parts of India in a state level elections. In Saudi Arabia, people vote for electing their members in the municipal councils. Every member is representing a specific constituency, and the winner of the most votes actually gets into the municipal council. So by this way, people in Saudi Arabia also exercise their right to elect their representatives in municipal councils. Our next topic today is that the level of the government. Actually, governments in different countries are divided into different levels. Some countries have only two layers of the government, the central government and the provincial government. Some countries have three layers of the government, the central, the provincial, and the district governments. Some countries even have another layer of the government, which is called local government, or you can say the government at a union council level. So here we are going to discuss that what are the roles of the different levels of the government. So first comes the national government, or you can say the central government. You can say also that it is a federal government, or you can say that it is a government that runs the entire country at an overall level. So the responsibilities of this level of the government is to run different ministries, to manage the taxation, to manage the public health, education, and the important ministries like foreign office, like the defense ministry, like the Ministry of Interior. So managing police and army and security, all of this is the responsibility of the central government. So this government is at the level of capital, or at the level of the highest level of the country's power. State government, on the other hand, or you can say the provincial governments, they manage the affairs of their own jurisdiction within the country. They have their own area where they perform their jobs. The government of one state or one province cannot interfere into the affairs of another province or another state. They have their own limited responsibility, including, for example, education, building houses, building infrastructure, developing agriculture, developing the business within their own areas. So they are responsible for these smaller level jobs. but in constitutions they are also given, in some countries they are also given the permission to make their influence or to exercise their power in lawmaking. So every state is given a representation in the Senate or in the lower legislative body, where they send their representatives in to perform their responsibility in lawmaking procedures. So this is a state government. So another tier or another level of the government is local or municipal government, which is usually concerned with a very small level responsibilities that are related to a small community or a small city, or you can say a township. So their responsibilities are included, for example, maintenance of uh, city drainage system, streets maintenance, parks, or you can say roads to some extent, schools to some extent. So their responsibilities are usually not related to lawmaking procedure. They are following only the guidelines given to them by the state governments, or you can say the central governments. So their role is actually very limited. This slide actually tells us the pattern of the government in United States and how it is structured. From the picture, you can see that the government is having three pillars. The first pillar is legislative, which is responsible to make the laws. It is headed by, you can say, it is represented by the Congress, and Congress is composed of two houses, which is upper house, the Senate, and the lower house is the House of Representatives. The job of the Congress is to make the laws, to look after the constitution. If any law is considered unsuitable or it's considered not working anymore, so they replace it, they make amendments, they abolish. So they are responsible to make the laws. And also the Congress also holds the control over the national money. So all the bills related to expenditures, or you can say any kind of expenses initiated by the ministers, they are brought in the Congress for the approval. This another branch, you can say another pillar of the government is executive, which is one of the most important pillar, because the entire government is run by this branch. It is headed by the president. President of America is elected by indirect procedure. The public, they vote for their representatives in the Congress, as well as they vote for the electoral members. The electoral college then elects the president of the United States of America. All the secretaries, or all, you can say, all the different departments of the country that are responsible for different areas, they are working under the president. They are headed by secretaries, and these secretaries, every secretary is individually responsible to the president of the America. The third pillar is the judicial branch of the government. It is responsible to take care of the Constitution. They are the Supreme Court of the America is the guardian of the Constitution. Not only Supreme Court, all the courts in America, they serve as the guardian of the Constitution. At the same time, their responsibility is to implement the laws, particularly the criminal laws, or you can say any other procedural laws in the country. So they are the three branches of the government, and how the government works in America, it is just clear in this picture. We move on to now another government, which is the government of Australia. You can see that the structure of Australian government is quite different as compared to the government in America. Here the topmost, it is the Queen, which is also the Queen of Britain. Also, actually, the Queen of Australia is actually the Queen of Britain. And in Australia, the Queen is represented by the Governor General. So the state power is basically, which is represented by Crown, is delegated to the Governor General. And Governor General is the leader of, you can say, or you can say the in charge of the Executive Council. So all the state power is delegated to Governor General, who further delegates this power to the prime minister, or you can say the cabinet of ministers headed by the prime minister. Basically, the prime minister is representing the public. They come in the form of political parties. General voters, they vote the political parties in the form of members of the representatives in the upper house and the lower house. The upper house is Senate and the lower house is the House of Representatives. So voters actually they elect the members of these two houses, which in turn the winning party in the House of Representatives is given the chance to make the government, and by this way the prime minister is elected from the political party which is running majority in the House of Representatives. So by this way you can see how the government in Australia works, which is quite different from the working of the government in United States of America. What does it mean? That almost all the countries in the world, they have their own specific procedures to run the country's affairs, or you can say to run the affairs of the state, and it depends on the public which law they like and which law they don't like. So the laws that they like, their representatives, they make it part of their constitution. I hope you have understand the lesson, and it will help you to understand all the you can say basic concepts of how a government works. See you next time. Next week we will come back with a new lesson. Thank you very much.